Okay.
Yes. So today I would like to bring a different angle into the exploration of emptiness. In the book how to see you as you really are by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, His Holiness presents emptiness as a path of negation. So we more explore actually how we not exist. So in this book, we explore how we think we exist, and not only ourselves, but everything else. So how this moment, for example, to bring it into this moment, how does your sense of self appear to you, and how does outer phenomena appear to you? So if we look at that in this moment, we start to discover there's a sense of an I here and an independent world out there with things which exist solidly, independently from you, independent from a relationship with your mind, out there, self-powered, existing from their own side, inherently. So that's how most of the time our experience looks like. There's an I here, and there is a world out there, and this world is populated by others, and they are separate from me. So we don't see that we are co-creating the world we live in through making the things and people to what they are for us with our mind, with our projections. Yesterday I used this mantra of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, merely labeled by mind. But that's not how the world usually appears to us. It doesn't appear to us merely labeled. It appears to us as if that even the characteristics we attribute with things like beauty or ugliness, as if that is in the things. So beauty seems to come from outside to us. So we don't see it's something we do. We put on things and we solidify things in that. We might even get into an argument about that with someone who says, no, this painting is not beautiful, it's ugly. Yeah, so then we feel like disturbed because, no, can't you see? It's beauty. Yeah? And so that's not how things exist. And in the book, How to See Yourself as You Are, we explore that. Yeah? We explore and experience. It's not possible that things appear in the way that things exist in the way they appear to us. But what remains unanswered in that is, okay, if I don't exist in the way I believe, as I believe and I feel I'm a self-existing I, separate from the world. So if I don't exist like that, still there's experience. Definitely I'm here, so we can't deny that. So how do I exist then? Yeah. So, and that's an angle I want to bring into this using a bit more Mahamudra approach, so that we don't fall into an idea like meditating on emptiness means to make the world disappear and we are left with some kind of blankness or some kind of nothingness. So sometimes people have a fear in the exploration of emptiness that it's just a negation, and then in the end there's nothing. So that's why it's good to, even if we are not going deeply into that, to just today to bring bring the other angle of Buddha nature, of primordial mind, of the ground, of the fundamental clear light mind of death, and so on. So that when we hear the word emptiness, we feel attracted to it. We feel attracted to it as something which we long for to experience, something, a treasure, like something which is worth to put on the first place in our life in terms of our intention and in terms of what we want to find out in our life. So that's why I want to bring this topic of Buddha nature or primordial mind or the nature of mind into the discussion. And then next weekend, we will continue with the book. But before that, let's take 20 minutes to prepare the ground, enter the sacred space. Like yesterday, the field of prayers, the presence of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and bodhicitta, and then also a short reflection on impermanence and death. So let's take our seat. If you like, you can close your eyes. So then, if that is more comfortable for you and supports you in connecting with your inner world, adjust your posture. If you sit a bit rigid and strict, then you soften. And if you sit a bit sloppy, then you straighten up a little, so you find that sweet balance. Notice your posture, notice the whole body. And allow the shift from the doing, the busyness, from where you're coming from, the thinking world, being in your thoughts, and to the felt sense of your body. And with that, you gravitate to present moment awareness. And the breath can be an anchor, but with a slight, gentle attention. So you don't need to focus on the breath, just noticing the breath with a part of your attention. And maybe you would like to breathe a little deeper for a few moments. And with the in-breath, sliding and dropping. And then with the out-breath, there could be a bit of release. Or this kind of sighting when you sit down after days of work. So everything is being done. So now it's time for resting. So that kind of letting go of the being, of the doing. Like shifting gear. Unhooking from the thinking mind, the constant voice of the narrative self, unhooking from that, and appreciating a time of just being, feeling, meeting your inner world as it is. Without a need to change anything. Really like meeting a good friend in whatever emotional state this friend is. You give him a hug with your whole heart. So your awareness and your breath, particularly the in-breath, they become like this hug. And then I invite you to more consciously step into the meditation room, the virtual meditation room, where we are together as a Sangha, a safe space where you are welcomed as you are. So you can relax. You don't need to put up a show or try to feel different than you feel or have different thoughts. You enter the space, the sacred space, the safe space, just as you are. And when you welcome yourself like this, at the same time, you also invite the others. So we are here together as human beings with feelings. And we all struggle, but we also all have Buddha nature, the fundamental goodness in the core of our being. So we are confused and struggle, and we are also awake. It's both there. And then returning. Allow yourself to lose a bit of interest in the discursive mind. And instead, give yourself the gift to explore aliveness, presence, to be with reality and not with fantasy. Sensations, sounds, feelings. And in order to enhance our curiosity or our joy, to feel our aliveness, let's remember death. Death is certain and the time of death is uncertain. Now you are here, you are alive, you are aware. You breathe. So breathing. So within present moment awareness, to remember death and the uncertainty of death might help you to really appreciate the mystery and the gift and the wonderment of aliveness. And each in-breath is a gift of life. Feel the nourishing, life-giving aspect of each in-breath. And without doing anything, just being here and appreciating that everything just happens. Sensations, sounds, breath, feelings. Just the unfoldment of life as it is, streaming through you. Sometimes when we're here in present moment awareness, just being alive is enough. Just being alive, just being aware, just being here. Even if there's some discomfort happening for you, emotional or physical, still there's aliveness with possibilities, with rooms to explore. Past exists only in thoughts, merely labeled by mind. And the future exists only in thoughts, merely labeled by mind. But there is something here which is beyond words, beyond concepts. You don't need to think for this moment to exist. And you gravitate towards that. Where you let yourself fall or drop into the body and then beyond. And then for those of you where this is meaningful or makes sense, let's open to the field of prayer within the FPMT mandala, within the mandala of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Feeling the loving gaze of stillness. So open yourself to the possibility to feel the presence of the essence of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, or His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or whoever embodies bodhicitta and emptiness for you. And you feel it all around, pervading everything. As if you are bathing in the sun with your whole body. So that whatever arises within you is allowed and welcomed, is met with warmth and kindness and forgiveness. And in this openness, we are connected with all our brothers and sisters in the mandala of the FPMT who are here with us in the presence of the essence of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, in the presence of bodhicitta and emptiness. In the presence of love, essence love, unconditioned love, and boundarylessness, centerlessness. And you recognize thoughts as thoughts. They are fine, there's space for them, but they are useless right now. They are not always useless, but right now they are useless. So see if you can find the joy of just noticing what is here. And then you rest with what is here. Sensations, sounds, the energy of your feelings. But you go beyond words, you go beyond ideas. And more you are able to open to what is, less you struggle, less you suffer. And there might be even a possibility of moments of some sense of peace, some sense of stillness, inside, outside. And that's what you fall into. That's what you emphasize. Even if it's just a hint, a glimmer. Just a moment. Of just being. Just resting. And then let's see if we can connect with yearning or longing deep in our hearts and our being to grow, to heal, to open, to love. This natural longing in you, which brought you to your spiritual path, or which called you to your spiritual path. To wake up from confusion, to be of benefit for others, to help others. And in the end, the best gift we can share with others is the path of waking up. Let's for a few moments rest in that together. The seed of bodhicitta. Thoughts are recognized as thoughts. And dropping back. Into a presence which is beyond words. It's without words. And then you take your time, if you have your eyes closed, to open your eyes without leaving the seat of the meditation. There could be a bit of wonderment around seeing shapes and colors. We all know these experiences when we really appreciate seeing, when we really see without too much interference from the narrative self, from the blah, 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 that sometimes these moments where we in nature or when we see a beautiful piece of art, and sometimes our discursive mind, for a moment, there's a gap, and we really see. And somehow these moments, they stay in our memories. And of course, right now, we might not see something fantastically beautiful, but still we can bring the same kind of attitude towards the computer screen and the people you see on the screen and what you see behind the computer. For a moment of just seeing without so much projecting. So as I said, I want to bring a kind of different piece into our exploration of emptiness, more from the Mahamudra tradition. Both the path of analytical meditation, the path of negation, and the Mahamudra approach, they both lead into the same experience, but they use a different approach, a different door into the same experience. And I want to start with a quote from Lama Yeshe. I guess I read that quote already at one point, because I'm using that often in the beginning of the teachings I give. So this is from his Lama Yeshe's book, Introduction to Tantra. And it is from a chapter called The Fundamental Purity of the Mind. The fundamental purity of the mind. And already the title is pointing to what I would like to add to our exploration of emptiness. So what is called here the fundamental purity of the mind has many names in the Tibetan tradition. And today I want to kind of explore and reflect a bit and meditate also what is meant by this word, fundamental purity of the mind, natural goodness, the primordial mind. It's also called the clear light mind of death, Ösel, or it's called innermost awareness, Rigpa. So many different words for that which is undescribable and ungraspable. So that's always being said in these teachings. So we are actually starting to talk now about something which we can't describe. So it's a bit of a paradox. And this is also one of the great question and exploration in the tradition, in all mystic tradition, not only in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And it makes sense to assume, we don't know, but it makes sense to assume that all mystic traditions actually rest upon the same insight. They just put it into different words and they call it different names, and they develop different technologies to share this experience. And that's certainly something Lama Yeshe would confirm. Yeah, he does it in this book. Yeah. So what is meant by these words, and how can we as babies on the path, how can we open possibilities for non-conceptual experience? Because the conceptual mind can't fathom, can't grasp this. So in this chapter, the fundamental purity of mind, another word for that is Buddha nature. Yeah, so it's sometimes called Buddha nature, or non-dual awareness, unconditioned awareness, pure awareness. So Lama Yeshe writes, dwelling deep within our heart and within the hearts of all beings without exception. So within the hearts of all beings without exception, without exception. So this includes animals, this includes Trump, this includes Putin, this includes your children, this includes your cat, this includes the people you like, and this includes the people you don't like. This also includes the people you hate. Yeah, so within the hearts of all beings without exception. And this is actually a very important teaching, a very important pointer. Because what we see in other people is the shell, is the level of the conditioned mind. Yeah, that's what we see. And most of what we see in other people is pure projection. So when we look at other people, and particularly when we judge other people, what we're actually working and meeting there is our own mind. Yeah. But here the invitation or the assumption is that within the hearts of all beings, including yourself, yeah, including yourself. This is for us as people who are in the trance of unworthiness, in the trance of I'm not good enough. in the trance of I'm not lovable as I am, in the trance of that there's some kind of monster inside or something horrible, I better don't look. It's it really opposes a deep belief in many of us. So what is within the hearts of all beings without exception, Lama Yeshe says, is an inexhaustible source of love and wisdom. An inexhaustible source of love and wisdom. So that's his words now, describing a placeholder for the fundamental purity of mind. An inexhaustible, yeah. And there, when I say inexhaustible, then Lama Zopa comes to mind. Because being around Lama Zopa, you really have the direct experience that the joy and the vitality and the constant service was inexhaustible. It just was a source, like an inexhaustible source of activity, of awakened activity, of helping others, of sharing joy and peace and non-violence and goodness in the world, tirelessly. Yeah? So it is really inspiring to meet a person like Lama Zopa, because then what you read in the texts becomes real. You start to see, wow, this is actually possible in a human body. Being in a human body, that it is possible to really plug in and live from without break, to plug in and to live from, not from the operating system of the narrative self, and not from the operating system of what about me, what do I get out of this for me, but a completely different operating system, a complete shift, to live from a completely different source than the ego. Yeah. And you could say that when we use the word awakening, that word awakening actually describes this shift, of this shifting away from the operating system and to wake up into the operating system of bodhicitta. A shift. And I guess, when we are curious and mindful, we might appreciate that we have moments like that. We have glimpses of that, where there is less of an I and more living for others. And then remember the joy in that. And remember how creative you can be in a situation like that. How you become more vital. How it gives you actually energy. If the helping comes from a good place, from a healthy place. If it comes from a neurotic, fearful place, then that kind of helping and service makes you tired. Because it comes with an agenda, it's always disappointed, it's never good enough. So helping from a neurotic place, from a wounded place, it's not a bad thing, but that's not bodhicitta. That's not compassion. That's not really helping others. But sometimes we have these moments where we really give something and help someone without doing it for us. And that's the moments which are really the joyful, vitality-giving moments of our life. So the path is not like insist on, oh, I need to help others, I need to help others. Because that's very likely just spiritual bypassing and just following a kind of needing pattern, yeah. Which, as I said, it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's not about judging that, yeah. So, of course, we can continue that, but so we need to go deeper. So the question is, how can we tap into that inexhaustible source of love and wisdom? How can we do that? And how can we heal that which prevents us to tap into it? And then the helping is natural. You don't, there is no I should, or feeling guilty that you don't do enough, or it's an intuitive helping others, knowing what is reasonable and helpful to do, but not from the conceptual mind. Something in you always already knows intuitively what another person needs in that moment. At least that's the assumption that's based on the experience when we are in that place. So, and then he continues, and the ultimate purpose of all spiritual practices, whether they are called Buddhist or not, is to uncover and make contact with this essential pure nature. Is to uncover and make contact with this essential pure nature. So all the spiritual practices we might learn in the Tibetan tradition, beginning from breathing meditation to compassion meditation to the practice of Tantra, all the studies, everything we learn, everything Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa ever taught, the purpose of those practices, according to Lama Yeshe, is to uncover and make contact with this essential pure nature. So you could say that in this short sentence, Lama Yeshe presents you with the essence of the Tibetan tradition. What is the Tibetan tradition about? Yeah. And I want to kind of confirm this with a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And that is from a book. It's called The Heart of Meditation. And it is a teaching His Holiness gave in a Dzogchen center. The Great Completion, the Great Perfection teachings. And this is from chapter 5. And the title of this chapter is The Fundamental Principle Common to All Orders of Tibetan Buddhism. So that's the title. What's the fundamental principle common to all orders of Tibetan Buddhism? And as I said, and I imagine His Holiness might feel the same, I don't know, but Lama Yeshe does. maybe we could even say the fundamental principle common to all mystic traditions. What is that? But let's stay with the Tibetan tradition. So when he talks about the all orders, he mainly talks about the four schools: Shakya, Nyingma, Geluk, Kagyu, and then there's some others, but that's the four main. So what's the common on what kind of insight? So the founders of this tradition, what kind of insight did they have, and what actually do they want to share? Is there a common a common fundamental principle? So, and His Holiness writes, I have great interest in the statement by many wise persons in all the orders of Tibetan Buddhism that their systems come down to the same final principle. And I feel that is what I should and must explain. So the same final principle, the same experience, the same insight, the same mystic experience. Because if we look into the lives of the founders of the different lineages, they all had an experience, and then their teachings developed as their attempt to share this experience and make this experience available to others and accessible to others. And because people don't get it, more and more books are written, more and more techniques are developed. And then books are written on those books. And then philosophies are developed. And sometimes in this process of writing, and then studying the different philosophical traditions, we miss the point that we are actually practicing in a mystic tradition. And that the experience which this tradition was built on is actually very simple. It's very simple. Not easy. I mean, not like, yeah. So that's the problem. It's too simple. Yeah, it's too simple, too close, too natural, that we don't believe it. And every person who has a taste of this knows and feels that this is the most important thing in their life, by far. And they also feel, and they experience, this is the most precious thing to share with others. So they spend their whole life to trying to put into words and into techniques and into practices this experience. So much so that sometimes the essential experience gets completely lost out of sight. And we feel it's about learning all this stuff and learning all the philosophy. I mean, you can spend your whole life to study Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, and you don't get the juice because you're trying to understand something which is beyond thoughts, non-conceptual. So he says, he continues, such an exploration may be controversial. Yeah, it's very controversial because each of the different philosophies and lineages within the Tibetan tradition, and then if we go into other mystic tradition, they feel their words and their practices and their path is like the best, yeah. And their insight, that's the one. So it is controversial to just ask the question and to explore, is there maybe a common principle? Is there maybe the one similar mystic experience Such an exploration may be controversial, but in any case, these great scholar yogis say that all these systems come down to the same final basic insight, come down to the same basic final insight. So that's what these scholar yogis say. It comes down to the same basic insight, the same principle, because there is indeed a final basic experience on which they all alight. Yeah? Because there is indeed a final basic experience on which they all alight, from which they all grow. There is no way they should say this just to be polite. You find that sometimes, like people say out of politeness, yeah, there's different path up to the mountain, and actually we're all talking about the same, but it's like, they do it because they want to be kind and not to be intolerant, and yeah. So, but is it really like that? And it's an open-ended question. I'm not saying like I know that it is like that, but it is a possibility, something we need to explore ourselves. So, and then you ask the question, once there must be such a place of coming together, what is it? What is it? What is that? Basic insight. Yeah. And then he puts some words on that basic insight. And I just read some of them. In text we inherited from India, the basic principle is sometimes called the fundamental innate mind of clear light. The fundamental innate mind of clear light. Maybe you have heard a similar term when you studied the death process. So the death process in the Tibetan tradition is described in eight stages of dissolution. So it describes how in the death process the consciousness loses and dissolves the different levels, starting with the normal discursive narrative self level, and then going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then the senses go, yeah. The last one is the smell, I think. Memories go. Any sense of purpose go. Any sense of who you are and your gender, and so all the things which we are identified with in our normal waking state, they dissolve. Yeah. That's actually a similar process you do in the meditation on emptiness. Yeah, so because in the meditation of emptiness, you look at and you discover what you are not. And you go down. That's why it is common in the experience of emptiness, or in the exploration and meditation on emptiness, that you meet your fear of death. The mother of all fears is the fear of death, is the fear of annihilation. Because instinctively we feel we are that. We are that which is forced upon us in the death process to let go of. And in the meditation of emptiness, one way to look at the meditation on emptiness is it's preparing for death. It's preparing of letting go. It's letting go of identification. So in these teachings on the death process, this fundamental principle is called the fundamental, the clear light mind of death. It's called the clear light mind of death. So it's the same. That's what is pointed here. So it is that which dawns, which comes to the foreground. It's always there, but it's covered by our identification. So it's always there, but we don't experience it, or we don't we are not in touch with it, because we are only in touch with what we are not, believing that is what we are. So we are so fascinated by that what we are not, because we're believing it's who we are, that we miss this. So then there's other terms which are not so common. The space diamond the diamond pervading space, or sometimes he says it's called the jewel mind. And the last term he mentions is the translation, Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of the word Rigpa. And Jeffrey Hopkins translates Rigpa as innermost awareness, innermost awareness. So in the meditation on emptiness, when we go the path of negation, so realizing what you are not, realizing that you are identifying with something, realizing that you distort reality with this dualistic split, with this dualistic distortion of I am here and there's the other. So you start to see that and you look through that. So you are led through the path of negation into this experience, which is not described in the analytical teachings of emptiness. So in the analytical meditation on emptiness, similar like the Buddha does in the Heart Sutra, yeah. So he takes everything away in the Heart Sutra, like he pulls away all the carpets under your feet, yeah. This is not, this is not, this is not, this is not, yeah. And he not even starts with Tesla and iPhone and car, because he's talking to monks, so they already let go of that, yeah. But for us, a meditation on emptiness like that would be helpful to start with the pension plan and health insurance and account, numbers on account, and the gold in the cupboard and the iPhone. That's the most difficult. And yeah, so that's like, but then he starts with so what could a monk or a nun be identified with? Yeah, with ideas of spiritual progress, with knowledge, with the idea of attainment, and so on. So he takes that all away. Yeah, and then nothing. It's not like in the end he says something like, yeah, so now you are there in the groundless ground, nothing to hold on, goodbye. Yeah. So, and that's why then something happened, which is sometimes called the third turning of the wheel. The third turning of the wheel. So the the teachings on the Heart Sutra, it's called the second turning of the wheel. So that's the Buddha taking everything away. But then it was too much for the monks. They couldn't handle it. Yeah. So he then, in the third turning of the wheel, he brought up this teaching, the teaching on Buddha nature. That's the content of the third turning of the wheel. And that is then the base for the practice of Tantra, the teachings of Buddha nature. So what makes it so difficult when we talk about, when we use the word Buddha nature, it kind of hides this term, or it might hide the fact that we are pointing to something undescribable and ungraspable. So we can have like a mental image or an idea of what Buddha nature is, or the other terms also, awareness or pure awareness. And we have heard it before, maybe we read a definition, and then we have a sense of, yeah, I've heard this before. I think I know what they are talking about. So every word makes it too much into something. Every word is too reifying. It's too objectifying. Yeah? So that's why sometimes, particularly in the Gelug tradition, they just use the path of negation to avoid this pitfall that we make the Buddha nature or pure awareness as some kind of fundamental principle, like something which exists really, which we can find and which we can know. Yeah, so they try to avoid that by not talking about it, by keeping it open. So they just take away what you think you are, and then they push you over the cliff. and actually it could be that not having some trust, some intuition that being pushed over the cliff is not being pushed into annihilation or into a blank nothing. Yeah. So I think it's helpful for us to, even if it's like a baby intuition, a baby starting to understand and develop some trust, some faith, that at the end of dying, yeah, that there is not nothing. But there's also not something. So it's neither nothing nor something. So this is the question, how to share this. For me, Lama Zopa Rinpoche shared this through his mighty presence. So my experience with Lama Zopa Rinpoche was and is you could say. That in his presence, my discursive mind completely calms down and something opens up. And it's not because I understand his words. There's something else. It's called transmission. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche, just being present in a room, transmits this, which is beyond words, which beyond concepts, because he is it. He is resting in that. And his words come from there. So his words carry some meaning, of course, if you can understand what he's saying. It's also an acquired capacity to understand I mean, literally to understand what is he saying, and then to make sense of what he's saying was again another level, yeah. But that's actually not, for me at least, where the juice of Lama Zopa Rinpoche is. It's not in the words. It's not what he says. It's something which I then experience as, for example, I am in a place in my life where I imagine to have many problems, like unsolvable problems. I don't know, with the center, with Nalanda Monastery, where I was the director, and all these problems, and they are so important, right? Because they are my problems, and they are really heavy, I mean, that seems to be the case. And of course, then you forget the mantra merely labeled by mind, yeah. So you apply the merely labeled by mind to other problems, but not to the ones you personally have in that moment, because that's real problems, yeah. But my experience, and with the years, I just developed a trust, because it happened again and again. So if I came with my truckload of problems, and one has to emphasize my problems, right? You come with a truckload of my problems, yeah. So I enter the room with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and because I'm so occupied with my problems, I don't really listen to what he says, because I think about my problems, yeah, and I kind of expect to have an interview with him, or I write a letter with all my problems, so to get some solutions, some advice. And but then what happened always. They just disappeared. They just melted away. Not through something he said, but just by this mighty presence in the nature of love, which recognizes directly that problems exist merely labeled in the mind, that I make them. And if you see that, they liberate themselves. They dissolve. It's like snow in the sun. So Lama Zopa was the sun, and I put a ball of problems, snow, like packed together into the room, and it just melted away. And what is left is love, connectedness, openness. What is left is also this, I mentioned it with the seeing. Suddenly everything becomes so vibrant. It's not very, it doesn't need to be like an LSD trip or something, but it is something you start to notice, yeah, because the cloud of problems, they cloud your senses. So when that cloud dissolves, because you see it's made up and it dissolves, not because you want to get rid of them, it just dissolves. And suddenly you start to see, suddenly you start to feel, suddenly you notice, wow, here's other people. I'm not alone here. Yeah. So you start to feel connected with others. And then the next step would be slowly to learn to live from that. To live from that, not to live from the discursive mind, not to live from the nagging commentary of the narrative self, but to live from that openness. So you start to be moved by something which is bigger than you. You start to be moved by what is called in the teachings on the 5 Buddha families. You started to be moved by the 5 wisdoms. So, if I would have found like some method of instant transmission, I would do it, yeah. But that's not how. That's not how. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So it takes some time. Devotion. It takes also time to develop the meditative skills, your attentive skills, so that these glimpses can be, you can rest in them, and you can, so your mind is stable enough to notice glimpses and to deepen them. But maybe towards the end of this series, maybe we can look at some of the pointers and some of the questions, kind of koans within the Mahamudra tradition, which help us to experience the gap in the discursive thought, the gap, yeah, these gaps, which naturally break into our life sometimes, but there's also certain methods within the different mystical traditions which create a condition so the discursive mind kind of breaks open and something else becomes available. Yeah? Is there any comment, question? Yes, Philip.
Thank you so much. So I've been reading a teacher who makes the same point over and over and over again. And he says, what you need to do is learn to recognize the essence of mind. And the question I've had recently is, how do you do that? How do you recognize the essence of mind? How do you recognize Rigpan?
Yeah, that's the $1 million, the billion dollar question. How to recognize the nature of mind? Yeah, that's another twist on that question is, who is recognizing the nature of mind? With what? With what are you recognizing anything? Yeah, so that, for example, this question, with what are you recognizing anything? With what do you know anything? So that could be, if that is said in the right moment between two people and the conditions come together, then that question is pointing out the nature of mind. What knows? What is it what knows this? This, whatever, you know, this sound, this feeling, this what you see. What is that? So what is this clear knowing which doesn't change? What you know changes. So now you hear other words. You see different things, you have different feelings, but there's something there which knows all of this, and that doesn't change. It's always there. This is like the mirror. Yeah, so they use the mirror analogy. So what is being reflected in the mirror, that comes and goes and changes. But what is that mirroring? So and there's, you know, there's different insights which help, and one is that which knows what you experience right now. So the knowing, it's called the empty, clear knowing. Empty, clear knowing, or knowingness. Empty, clear knowing. That's not an object. So the question, how do I experience this, doesn't make sense, because if you could experience it, then it wouldn't be it. Because you can only experience objects. So you can't experience it. First, there is no it. Yeah, there is no it. Because it's not a thing. It's not something you can describe. It's a completely different kind of phenomena than any kind of other phenomena. So that's why when we talk about the knowing, we say empty knowing. It's empty. Yeah, there's nothing there. In a way, you could say there's nothing there, but it's not like, you know, some teachers says there's nothing there, but what a nothing. Yeah, there's nothing there, but what a nothing. Yeah, you can say, oh, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. You know, but you can also say, wow, there's nothing there. Yeah. There's nothing there. And this is the most precious, somehow, the most precious, delightful, not thing, but yeah, experience. So you can't experience it because you are it. It's from where you are looking from. So it's a bit like if I would tell you now, look at your own eyes. How do you know if you don't look into a mirror and things like that? Because then, of course, you see the reflection of your eyes, but that's not your eyes. So you can't experience your own eyes directly because they are that which you are looking with. But nevertheless, right now, you have an experience of eyes, of looking. You have an experience. So you can't say, oh, I can't see my eyes, so there are no eyes. No, because that's not your experience. You see. So So yeah, maybe it's helpful, maybe not. It's like yeah, maybe you get like different pieces of a puzzle, and nobody knows when this moment is. And devotion helps, studying of emptiness helps, purification, accumulation of merit, all that helps. So this is not in vain, the progressive path methods. So that's all the things we can do, even if it's contaminated by the ego structure. Yeah, but still we do these things. And then at one point, you will get that question or other formulation of what is aware, who is experiencing this, or what is experiencing this, or you hear a poem or a song, or you come into the presence of a teacher who embodies this for you. And then suddenly, with your heart, with your intuition, it's like, wow, this is so simple. How could I not be aware of this? And that's the pointing out instruction, which is used in the Tibetan Dzogchen tradition. And you will never come to the place where you know it with a discursive mind. It's a different kind of knowing. It's so different that sometimes it's called not knowing. You know by not knowing it. You know it by not knowing it. Yeah, Philip, we have to keep on exploring this. Yeah, this is it. This is, even if we don't know it, this is what we are looking for. We are looking for what is looking. We are looking for that which is looking. We are seeking that which is seeking. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It doesn't make sense to say that makes sense, but it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I can see in your face, in the way it makes sense. There's something in you, and that's what I'm talking to, which knows what we are talking about. And it's faint, it's like an intuition. These words don't trigger resistance in you, no, but there's like a deep listening, a deep, like, your heart already knows where you are home. Yeah. And so it's also about learning to trust that whisper, that kind of, it's like, I don't, that sounds familiar. There is something, and so, yeah. Yes, you're welcome. Yeah, Ali?
You kind of went in this direction, but asking the question, how do you recognize the nature of mind? Can one also say, start talking about the feeling of love, the experience of love, or moving into the heart as a way of doing that same work?
Yes. It's a good direction. Definitely. But as long, if we use the word love as something which comes and goes, something like more in an emotional sense. So yeah, okay, so yes. So I mean, it's very common to bring the term into like unconditional love. I use essence love. It's a term I got from Mingo Rinpoche, I think, or Tsoknyi Rinpoche. So he uses essence love. Yeah. So as long as we use the word love in this context, not as something where we know what it is. Yeah. And that's right. In the Dzogchen tradition, they talk about like, it's maybe not so helpful to describe what you can't describe, but they do that nevertheless. So they mention these three qualities. It's empty, it's cognizant, so that's the knowingness I'm talking about. And the third characteristic, Tara Brach calls it tenderness. So the third characteristic has this goodness, you know, something you could call love. If you strip love from all the meaning it has in our culture, yeah. But there is something, there's a goodness. It's vibrant, it's alive, it wants to benefit. So that's where the awakened activity comes from, the creativity comes from. So the emptiness we are discovering is actually not dead. It's alive, it's vibrant, it's intelligent, it moves, it connects. Yeah. So love is a good word, yes. And knowing, I also use with Philip, like these words, like it's an intuitive knowing of the heart. Yeah, it's a wordless knowing of the heart.
Yeah, it's a state of being or an essence of beingness where no matter what object you're perceiving, it's through that lens of love and wanting to connect and
it also recognizes what you see as an appearance within consciousness, an empty appearance in consciousness. So it's completely relaxed. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't need to defend. It doesn't need to grasp, because it looks through everything. Yeah, it's not attached. It accepts what is completely with a sometimes in the meditation I use this, meditating with a heart like the sky. Yeah. Okay, so let's both share the goodness of this positive energy. Also remember in the field of prayer, asking for the swift return of the embodiment of the Lama Zopa principle on this planet again, in whatever way benefits beings. Yeah. So let's remember, so we can put the impulse of this meeting also there. Yeah. So see you next time. Thank you so much for turning up and listening. And yeah, I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Stephan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephan. Really appreciate it. Wonderful teaching. Thank you all.
Thank you.
No.